Hey Sheik, how are you? Welcome. We're going to get started in a little while. Just waiting for this room to fill in a little bit. Hey Dime, I'm just waiting to. Yeah, there's Micah. Rolo told me he was going to be late, so I was waiting for at least a Mavericks fan to join in on the conversation about their team since my co-host Rolo is going to be a little late. Thanks for joining us, Micah. Hoping you can come up to the stage so I'm not giving a dissertation. Um, since my co-host is going to be a little late. If you can understand. But we're here to really give Dirk his flowers and talk about the Dirk Maverick era, Dallas Mavericks. I love Dirk as a player, and like people like to compare. Sometimes I see people talking about Dirk, like sometimes they revert back to Dirk when they're talking about the Mavericks, as a comparison to Luca. And I was like, you know what? That's not fair to Luca. He's pretty much just starting his career. He's, like over here. Like I know he's been a player for a while, like over in Europe. But we're going to talk about the Mavericks that Dirk played. We're going to talk about the teams that Dirk played on during his era, and talk about the 2000. We're not just going to talk about the 2011 championship. Some people are not aware that Dirk actually won an MVP before the 2011 NBA Finals. So we're definitely going to talk about Dirk. We're going to talk about some peak Dirk. Like some favorite games of some of you, some of the Maverick fans, and talk about the history. Like, like Jason Kidd was there, 94 till around 96, 97. You have Finley arrive. Like, we're going to talk about the time frame of some of these players, and how, and their influence on the Mavericks. So I'm looking forward to this discussion and talk about the quality of teammates, like that, the teams that Dirk played on. Of course, you have the Dirk era, which was really 1998 through 2019. Dirk played 21 years in the league. So we're going to celebrate his time. It's funny because with Dirk, he entered the league right when one of his favorite players retired. Mike retired after the 98 finals, and Dirk entered the NBA. He was in the NBA draft that summer. So he just missed him. But hey, Dime and Micah, thanks for joining the stage. And get tuned into the Rewind where we discuss and sports history, and we're going to be doing current events too. So who knows? The rewind may change the name, but we discuss sports history through the lens of media or just chat and discussions. Today we're going to talk about Dirk. Looking at his career from the time he was drafted, look at peak Dirk, talk about 2011 finals, and talk about the end of his, like the waning years of his career and his influence on the game that to me still exists today. We're joined by Dime, who is a huge Clippers fan, but as a Clippers fan, and he's a historian as well, she's tracing the game from the beginning. But NBA's taken away a lot of, really like, or stripping away games from the internet. So it's giving him problems with studying the game, but he's a young guy who loves this game and knows the history. And Micah is a Mavericks fan. We're waiting for Rolo to come in to help us with the conversation. Work duties. We know how that goes, but he'll eventually join us. But Dime, did you want to introduce yourself to the people?
No, not. I don't know if there's much to say. I want to say hi though. It's been a while since we've done a little space. Shout out to
I already
Micah.
said everything, right, Dime?
Yeah,
Like
you
I
kind of said
already.
everything. You gave me too nice of an intro, but Micah, nice to be on the mic with you, man. Talking some great historic Mavs. I got the pleasure of seeing Dirk Nowitzki play live a couple of times,
Oh
and I had his.
wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, well, Clipper tickets are pretty cheap. I even
Mhm.
saw him make a game winner against the Clippers too in 2006, late in the season. It was my first ever game winner I saw live, and Dirk was one of those players that, like, even though I'm a fan of another team, you just couldn't help but love the guy. That's one of the NBA players, in my opinion, where you ask around the world. I don't think I've met anyone in my entire life, and you know me, I talk basketball with everybody. I don't think I've met somebody in my entire life that said, I don't really like Dirk Nowitzki. He's kind of weak. Like, I don't like him. Never met one person that said that. Just a universally loved player. Also, fun fact, I've been to his hometown of Würzburg before. Um, but
Oh.
and I didn't even know that was his hometown. We were actually just driving from Munich to Berlin because I had some family in Germany, and we happened to just be in Dirk's hometown one time. So that was cool. But just an amazing player. I have his jersey still. It's too small for me, but I bought it when I was a kid, and just an amazing player that we were so happy to see win that elusive ring for the Mavericks. Just an absolute goat.
Yeah, he's an absolute goat. Thank you, Dime. Micah, do you want to introduce yourself before we just dive into some Dirk?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Micah, been a Mavs fan for a long time. It's kind of hard these days, but that's another story for another day. But yeah, I've been a fan of basketball since I was 6 years old. I started watching whenever MJ really ascended, and that was my favorite player. That's the guy that made me fall in love with basketball. And yes, he is the GOAT. Somebody can argue with a wall. But anyways, um, but after the last dance, they just they didn't have that without that guy and me being from Texas, they just didn't have that allure anymore. So I started watching Mavericks games with my grandfather, and that was right after Dirk got drafted. So I am happy to conversate about a great player and an even greater human being that has done so much for the sport. Um, Look, we are in an era where the top five players, let's just say top four, are European. That's because of Dirk. That's the greatness that he brought to this game. So I'm glad to take this time to appreciate his greatness and his life.
You mean some of the top five play? You mean like the top four players in the world are European? I mean Luca,
Giannis,
Giannis. Yeah,
Giannis,
you
Luca,
you mean a few of the top
Jokic.
five?
Yeah, a few. Giannis, Luca, Jokic. So yeah, let's say three. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
leave it at that.
Okay. Okay. I won't. I
Well,
won't.
is what I'm saying is there's a lot of great
No,
foreign
I feel
talent
you. There's a Yeah. He
that
definitely influenced. He came
right
after my
before.
favorite player from Europe, which is Petrovic. But
Oh
he
yeah,
came in and yeah, he definitely changed. He took it to the next level. for international players for sure. One of my favorites. I don't hear talked about nearly as enough on this app. So thank you so much, Micah. Thanks for joining us, Sheik. You want to give a slight introduction of yourself, and we can dive into Dirk right after you.
Yeah, good night. Just wanted to say peace to everybody in the room. Not really uh content creator or anything, just been a Mavs fan from 2002. So I've been here for the majority of the Dirk era. The reason why I'm a Dallas Maverick fan is because of Dirk Nowitzki. I live in the Bahamas, so that could tell you what kind of influence he had as an international player to somebody all the way on the other side of the world in a tiny ass country. So yes, I'm here to celebrate Dirk as much as the next guy.
Well, thank you for being here. So tonight we're going to talk the Dirk Nowitzki era, the Mavericks, which went from 1998 when he was drafted up until 2019. Of course, we know he won an NBA championship in 2011. He won his, but it's important to note that he was a member of the 50-40-90 club in 2007, and he won the MVP, the most valuable player, also in 2007. I think it is my opinion that some people think that the peak of Dirk was, I've heard this many times said, which is not true, was 2011, not realizing that Dirk, made the playoffs for the first time, and like a few years after it was drafted, stayed in the playoffs for a number of years. He was doing his thing for years before 2011 happened. I'm glad he got his ring, and he's considered one of the greats. But it's important to note that he peaked before 2011. But yeah, Dirk was drafted, as we know, in 1998. Um, he was selected actually by the Bucks as the ninth overall pick. So, anything you guys want to say or remember about the draft or want to mention about Dirk, like he was traded to Dallas, as we all know. But anything you want to say about this young man at the time he was in the same draft as Vince Carter, as Paul Pierce, Bonzi Wells, Jason Williams, Larry Hughes, Mike Bibby. He was in the same draft as, Rashard Lewis. When you heard that Dirk was coming, Katina Mobley. What did you guys think out there in Dallas?
Um,
Did you
look,
have
a
any,
lot.
go ahead.
Look, like when he first came out, like he was kind of raw. So to see him just like explode like just a couple of years later was amazing. And yeah, 2011. Come on, people. He was in the Western Conference Finals in '03, going up against. That's back when the West was a monster. When San
Yeah, the West
Antonio's
was
on
mighty then.
the
But my
ranking.
question is mainly, were you pissed about, because some people, when a player is drafted, like sometimes you see the booze. Like, what did you guys realize the blessing that you guys had, or were you like, oh man, Paul Pierce was right there? Like, what was the kind of reaction of you guys when Dirk was drafted? That's what I'm trying to get to.
I mean, it's well, like I said, like when I first started watching him, it's like a season or two after he got drafted, and like just like I'm saying, like a season or two. I don't remember the reactions for when he first got drafted. I don't really think there was much of a reaction, because like Dallas had stunk for a long time, so like people weren't really into him like that. They were stinky, like and so,
Yep,
but
yep,
just
yep. I'm
like
looking at these records before he got there. Yep, yep.
yeah, yeah, like 15s and 20s. But
Yeah,
anyways,
they were winning. Yeah, the season before he was drafted, they won 20 games. Um, and then the season he was drafted, they won 19, and then it jumped. But go ahead.
right. but like it wasn't long at all until he just popped. It was like I would say like you
His
said,
third
he
season.
got yeah, like his third season, you're like, oh, this is gonna be a guy, you know. So
Yeah, his third
I don't
season.
really
The third
remember there
season is when they
being
won
a
40 games. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
They were
yeah, the
running
third
that
season is when they
run.
won 40.
Yeah, they were running, and they were starting to run the Donnie Nelson offense, and it's just like that was what it caught the league by storm. Like when it really first started catching on, like a lot of what the Warriors run today is has certain aspects of Don Nelson, excuse me, Don Nelson's offense. It still has certain aspects of it. So
Yeah,
it
the
caught the
season
league
he
by storm.
the season he came in, there were, you had Sean. The starters were Michael Finley, Steve Nash, Gary, like AC Green, um, Sean Bradley, you had guys like that, starting for the team that year, and you guys ended up winning 20 games. Like you guys finished 19-31 that season. Then when you look at when we go to the third when we go to like the 1999 through 2000 season, that is the season that you guys won 40 games. And that's the season you had Cedric Sabalas. Like that's the year that Michael Finley, of course, was still there, but that's the season that Dennis Rodman was there for a short spell. Cedric Sabalas, Steve Nash was still there, Sean Bradley. When you think about that team that won 40 games, that's probably the season you started watching. Anything you guys want to highlight about that season? That's the season where, to me, he really, he played 82 games that year. His points per game were 17.5. And his total rebounds, like Dennis Rodman was there, so rebounds, he got pretty much most of them. But tell me about, anything you guys want to recall and talk about from that season he broke out, the third season. Sheik, you can jump in here if you want.
Yeah, I definitely started watching around the fourth season, like in '02, maybe his first year when he was an All Star. So I don't really remember the team
Oh,
with.
you really didn't track. Okay, we can
Yeah,
go. I mean, if you guys want to jump to when he started making all star teams, we can. I'm not, like I just wanted to, in case someone on here wanted to talk about his ascension, from when he was drafted to Rolo. Request, like raise your hand. Um, if one, I was wondering if you want, but we could start from when he started making all star teams. Go jump right into 2002. Go ahead, she.
no, definitely. Like, yeah, that year when he in 2002, when I started watching, that was it was just a different experience for me, to be honest. I've never seen because I've never watched Larry Bird play. So to see a white man just get buckets was kind of like, hey, this white boy is kind of good, kind of thing. So looking at the roster, and I was like, damn, this is a really white team. That's crazy to be in such a colonized place or colonized country to be like, I like these white boys. But yeah, watching his ascension from uh because I've gone back and I've looked at like where he was in the sophomore season because in the rookie season it was a lockout, so he didn't really have much time to show what he could do. So when I saw him like up his points per game to 17 a game, I was like, all right, he was coming around, and then I saw that the following year he was up again at around 20, and then in 2002 around 23 points per game. I was like, all right, he's starting to get into his own. So it was definitely a nice roster that was built. I think we had Steve Nash, Michael Finley. I remember Sean Bradley, and I think it was Tim Hardaway Sr., Rafe LaFrance. It was just it was a fun team to watch because it was really the birth of like that run and gun style that D'Antoni, implemented. But Dallas was really the first ones to do it.
Hey Rolo, thanks for joining us. You can jump on in here if you want. That's the season that was also the first season that the Mavericks made the Western Conference Finals. They made the Western Conference Finals that season. I'm looking at 2001, 2002. They were in semifinals 2001 and 2002. Anything
Hey,
you want to
Malika.
say here, Rolo? Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, I was gonna just jump back a little bit. Thank you again
go
for
ahead.
hosting
Go
the
ahead. Yeah.
space. Yeah. So I wanted to just jump back a little bit to their first playoff win. Whenever they busted the playoff drought, that's when to Chico's point, when the big three was officially, the term coined, um, with Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki and Michael Finley. And I just remember fondly because it was the series against the Utah Jazz. It was still whenever the first round series were only, played 5 games. And so I remember vividly that the Utah Jazz took those first 2 games. I think the second game was even a blowout, if I recall correctly. And then I was just thinking, man, here we go again. And I, again, I really, like I said, I really appreciate you discussing Dirk Nowitzki because he's my same age. I actually beat him by a couple of months. But man, I really idolize that guy so much. I really appreciate everything that he did for not only for Dallas basketball, but also for Dallas in general. Like you guys could, say what you want to. A lot of people say that Texas and North Texas for sure are a football town. But I tell you what, there was definitely a time when Dirk Nowitzki could probably lay claim to being the best sports guy in Dallas, even though it took him a while to actually win, get over that hump. So yeah, but I mean, specifically going back to 2000 and 2001, I mean, I don't know what you guys have discussed. I'll have to listen back. I'll have to rewind it back whenever on the playback. But
No, go
um,
ahead. I was tracing from when he was drafted, and we skipped over that year only because Sheik said he started watching like 2002. But we can talk about the 2001 because 2001, yeah, that was when they got their first playoff wins, and it was
yeah,
so
definitely.
yeah.
So it was really really fun because I remember, like I said, the second game. I if I recall correctly, that Utah Jazz, they laid they laid it down on the Mavs. So I was thinking, man, here we go again. But you know what, Dirk and Steve Nash and Michael Finley really took it to them in games 3 and 4. And so once game 4 rolled around, I was thinking, man, it's a winner take all game 5. So I was really, really happy with the outcome, obviously, because they hadn't won a playoff game. The 90s was dreadful. If any of you guys recall the 90s for the Dallas Mavericks, there was a little bit of ray of sunshine with Jason Kidd, Jamal Mashburn, and Jim Jackson. But other than that, I mean, and that fell by the wayside really, really quick. There really wasn't much to discuss when it comes to Dallas basketball in the 90s. So I actually, at that point in time, I was following the Bulls pretty closely and Michael Jordan. So that's the reason why I became a Dirk fan when he actually got traded to the Mavericks. And so, yeah, I mean, the 2000-2001 playoffs was really, fondly remembered by me because that was them getting over the playoff hump, winning the
Yeah,
first
they won the
round.
third game. They won
Yeah.
the third game. They lost the first two. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it was really really fun. Like I said, like Chico just pointed out, it's just Dirk coming into his own. You can see he was still a little timid. Like you could tell that he hadn't really developed that leadership, role that he'd come to um, take over after Steve Nash left. But I mean, they played a hell of a series against an aging Karl Malone and John Stockton, and took that series from them. So I don't really recall what happened in the next series. I know that they lost, but yeah, I mean, it was a fun
They
series.
won one game the next series, but it's interesting. I look at this team, and that team that year, Jawan Howard was on the team, and I was just thinking because Christensen always talks about how good Jawan Howard is. Jawan Howard was on that team. Michael Finley, Steve Nash, and Sean Bradley. Those were the starters that year. I mean, Dirk. Yeah, basically. Dirk, 30, was averaging, I guess, around 33 points. Played 48 minutes most of the time. Like, he pretty much was grinding that series. But yeah, that was their first series win. And then they moved on, and they moved on to the next round. But yeah, that was a big deal. That is something that we definitely, starting with that series makes perfect sense. Then the next series, they ended up playing Spurs. Well, and they won game 4. Um, but they lost game 5. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
so they
And the
did. They
Spurs will
weren't.
go
They
on.
got a gentleman's sweep. They weren't like swept. But it was a gentleman's sweep in 2001. So yeah, that's a great memory to and a great history, like that he helped bring that to the Mavericks, like playoff wins. Like, he actually brought that there. Like, there was an expectation of, okay, he started establishing expectation that we're going in the playoffs, because the next year, 2001, 2002, the Mavericks again made it to the semis, and with the 2001, 2002 season. And that's the season that he became an all-star. That's the one Sheik was talking about. So anything we want to recap on this season before we get to talking about the playoffs from that year?
Go ahead, Chico.
Yeah, I just want to jump straight into the playoffs for the 2001 2002
Go
year.
right ahead. Yep.
Yeah, so that was definitely Dirk's coming out party because at the time, like Kevin Garnett was considered the best power forward in the league. So to sweep Kevin Garnett 3-0 in the first round and then Dirk dropping a cool 33 and 16 on him was stuff that legends do, especially how great of a defender Kevin Garnett was. His reputation as a great two-way player, and then to get swept and to just put up big numbers like that, I was vastly impressed. Even though the following round we got our asses handed to us by the Sacramento Kings, but Dirk once again showed up with like 26 and 12 average through that series. So I was like, yeah, he's gonna be all right.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely put the like the previous year playing Utah. Yeah, that I agree. Him coming out with that series, that was definitely a game changer. No doubt about it. Rolo, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I just specifically remembered the San Antonio Spurs and the Sacramento Kings being foils to Nowitzki in those early years of the playoffs, where it was one or the other. So the funny part about it is I feel like to
But they
Chico's
swept.
point.
They swept the Timberwolves. I mean,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
put
no,
it
no,
on.
no. That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna just reiterate what Chico was just saying, that it's funny that Dirk, obviously that because of the era or whatever, he gets lumped in there with Tim Duncan, the
Hmm.
greatest of all time. KG, Chris Webber. Maybe even a little bit of David West, Sheed Wallace. Stuff like that. But I feel like in that Dirk really doesn't get his due that he did bust KG's ass in that series. I mean, it wasn't even, you know, his reputation certainly preceded him as a great defender, but against Dirk, I mean, he didn't do anything. Dirk pretty much got anything that he wanted. And the other thing, just to kind of circle back, also, Dirk had always had a reputation for being a floor spacer, obviously hitting the big threes and stuff like that. But we got to remember, I mean, this is in an era where they weren't shooting as many threes, right? Dirk, I think, averaged maybe 5 or 6 threes in his career, or four or five, 4 point something, 5 threes for his career. So he was actually more of a mid-range assassin, and so I mean that's the thing with Dirk. I mean, there was a graph, I forgot if it was Kirk Goldsberry that shared it. I'm gonna see if I could find it. Where there's like 6 or 7 spots that Dirk dominated basically inside the inside the free throw area, inside the arc there, and I don't know if anybody's really going to ever catch up to that. But yeah, I mean, he definitely dominated KG in that series, but then he got into the. I just think that Rick Adelman and Chris Webber and I believe it was Hito Turkoglu, and they just had a really good game plan. I think they would double team him all the time, and it really just wreaked some havoc there against the Mavericks in that second round, and that let Sacramento. I think that was the year that Sacramento played LA in that controversial, Western Conference Finals and stuff. So, but yeah, it was a great series between the Mavericks. It definitely announced Dirk's arrival, and it was definitely foreshadowing things to come in the next few couple of playoffs as well. Malika, did we lose you? Hello.
I'm sorry. I was on mute and I'm having a conversation with you guys. Sorry. It's funny because 2000 2001 he averaged 22 points a game. Then the next year in 10 and about 9.2 in rebounds, and then for the next few seasons he was pretty much close to 10, like 9.9 rebounds. He was basically averaging a double double 2002 and 2003 and close to that in 2004. So let's continue and go through and talk about more of those, because I don't, I feel like when I talk about Dirk, 2011 always comes up. But the great thing about this space is we get to look at all these years Dirk was making the playoffs and he just couldn't get over that hump. But it's not like he wasn't putting in work in these years. Because when we get to 2000, he lost in the first round in 2003 and four. But they made it to the finals in 2002 and 2003. That was the first year you guys made the finals. Do you want to, you guys want to go into that history? The fact that you guys were in the finals for the first Western Conference Finals for the first time. Really, the Western Conference Finals, but yeah.
Yeah, the Western Conference Finals. This is where like my fandom grew for Dirk in terms of like just overall watching basketball. The 2003 playoffs was definitely the year that we supposed to win, and I know for sure that we would have moved on to the finals and beat the Nets. Dirk would have secured at least 3 championship rings during his tenure, but because he got injured in that Western Conference Finals, we were not able to win. But thank God for Nick Van Exel on that roster. Like he played his heart out. But I am definitely sure that if Dirk was able to play those games in the Western Conference Finals in 2003, he would have already won his first ring.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chico. I mean, that was I think he banged his knee with Manu Ginobili, if I recall, in the against the Spurs, and I remember hearing that they were talking with the training staff, and Dirk was just adamant about going out and playing. But I think that the reason why they decided against it ultimately was that he decided to go ahead and play. He could have just aggravated his injury even further. Think kind of like the what is it, the KD injury that occurred during the was it the Golden State Warriors?
In
Uh,
Toronto, yeah.
yeah, the Toronto series. Whenever he was hurt, and then he just aggravated and created a worse injury for himself. It wasn't the same type of injury, but it could have been something that could have exacerbated had Dirk gone out there to play. And then as we've seen now, all these years later, whenever they did the NBA 75, you see Dirk walking around. He's limping as it is. Could have been a lot worse. His career could have gotten cut short. So I was kind of glad that they went ahead and against his better competitiveness and stuff and decided to hold him out and not play. But I agree with you 1,000%. I think the Mavericks could have definitely won, and he would have definitely had his first ring that year. And we would be discussing Dirk in the top 10 probably had he gotten 3 of those rings, instead of where he's at right now. Which, I mean, I personally have him in my top 20, all time. But I know people. It's very subjective list. And it's going to grow and change as times keep coming. But yeah, in 2003, 2004 was a really disappointing season because I really thought that they had a grand opportunity there to cement at least one of Dirk's rings. The other thing also that was fascinating about this year, and it was already kind of starting, but was the whole soft European thing. They'd already said it like multiple times, over the years before then for other players as well. But this is the beginning. Like whenever Dirk got hurt, and then it was just playoff disappointment after playoff disappointment. That's when all this noise about the soft European player. And if anybody knows Dirk Nowitzki, he's not a he puts in the work all the time. He was not a soft player. He would bust your ass. He would talk shit to you. He just wasn't as loudmouth as other people were about it, But he would just sit there and make a shot and stick his tongue out, and he was wilding. People that knew him, when on the court would tell you guys stories after stories about how he truly was a tough competitor and everything like that. And the biggest compliment, I'm sure we're going to get to this eventually, was when Kobe Bryant outright was trying to recruit him to go to the Lakers, to finish out his twilight years. I mean, there's no better compliment than having Kobe Bryant wanting to recruit you to come to the Lakers to go finish out your twilight years and try to win a ring there. So, but yeah, I mean, 2003, getting back to 2003, 2004, if he wouldn't have banged knees or whatever it was that happened, I really think that he would have won a championship that year.
So you think they could have beat the Spurs
Oh yeah, I
in
think I
in
think
the playoffs? Okay.
yeah, I think that he was on his way to beating them. He was playing them really, really well. It was just that he got hurt and
No,
nobody
we
else could step up.
sorry, we still on 2002, 2003. That's what Rolo mean. So yeah, we was already in the Western Conference Finals. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
talking about the Western Conference Finals. Yeah.
yes, sir.
Oh yeah, that was a 60. That was a 60-win season. Okay. Okay. Yeah, 60 wins and 22 losses. They were coasting. So I get what you're saying. Micah, jump in here.
Yeah, and that was giving them those that were talk, and that's just like I think like people forget how great like the defensive forwards were like back in that time, like the people that you had to go up against, like we talk about Chris Webber, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Mr. Big Fundamental, like so for him to just like I always thought that was one of the most amazing things was like given probably some of the best defensive forwards that we've seen straight giving them that work. Like, but another thing, like, so another thing that gets brought up about that, I was going to ask all about this, like, because that like Mark got rid of Don right after that that run
Right after
because he felt like
2005. Yeah, it looks like Don Nelson was there through part of 2005. And 2000 part of 2005 season is when he let him go and brought in AJ Johnson.
right. So so it's a little bit after that, right? Okay, yeah, because like Marquis talked about in interviews that he was kind of feeling some kind of way about them holding Dirk out, but I don't know what like I don't know. Like Mark did not appreciate that guy. I swear he didn't. Like, but anyways, that's for another story.
Yeah, and that in 2000, I mean, anything you guys want to cover before we jump to the finals? Because the year after that, they went out in the first round. Then they went back to the semis, and that's when the season was broken up between coaches. Like Don Nelson started the season, A. Johnson finished it. Anything you want to go through in that season before we talk about them making the finals?
Yeah, that was the season that Mark Cuban and all his grandeur and everything decided not to pay Steve Nash, and so Steve Nash walked away and decided and signed a contract with Phoenix, and that's essentially they turned the team over to Dirk. Then Dirk, I believe Finn was still there, at least one or two more seasons if I recall. But yeah, I mean that was huge because Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki obviously came to the Mavericks together. So, I mean, uh, Dirk in that, draft day trade. And then I think it was Steve Nash also in the trade as well. And they were introduced together and they were really, really close, best friends. I mean, they still are to this day, really, really close. And so I think that was a what is it, a quintessential point in the history of Dirk, because that's when I feel that he actually legitimately took the reins over as the leader, overall leader of the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, we all knew that that's where the direction was going, but I believe that once Nash left, and then especially once Finn left, but Finn was already kind of not playing, especially the last couple of part of his, the seasons that he was there with Dallas. He wasn't as he'd have good games here and there, but he wasn't what Dirk was doing on a night to night basis, and so that's when I view it as Dirk officially took the Mavericks over, and it was Dirk's team, and it was building around Dirk and how he played and needing to bring in pieces to work, with him, obviously with his defensive limitations and everything. What's up, Chico?
Yeah, definitely. Just wanted to add in that. Yeah, that Steve Nash departure definitely hurt the franchise itself too, but they still went on to continuously win 50 games due to the prowess of Sir Dirk Nowitzki. But also, I just wanted to throw in how important it was for us to draft good players before the finals that we were in, because between those years we picked up Josh Howard, Marquise Daniels, and Devin Harris, and they were important pieces to the franchise because Josh Howard is an integral piece to why we actually won all the way down in 2011 as well. So just wanted to add that in there.
Yeah, those are great points, man. I mean, definitely. Um, it's really baffling how the front office has changed so much over the years. Where the draft that is historically for Dallas hasn't really been a huge point of area where they've picked up great players other than Dirk, other than Luke, and like you said, Josh, Devin Harris, Marquise Daniels. There a couple players here and there, but overall, Dallas has never been a strong suit place that has drafted extremely well. So we'll see how it goes moving in the future. But yeah, those were definitely key pieces, and especially in some of the trades that led to some of the other players that ended up coming in and helping during the finals run and also during the eventual championship run. So yeah, Malik, if you want to go ahead and transition over to the first NBA Finals run between the Mavericks and the Heat, if you want to go ahead and talk about that. You there, Malika?
I did it again, Rolo. I started talking before I hit the unmute sign. So, yay. But in 2005, 2006, there was another 61 season for the Mavericks. And this team made it to the finals that year under Avery Johnson, and, which was a hell of an achievement. The first finals appearance for for this team. So that's the year where your starters. The starters that year, of course, Dirk, Jason Terry. You had Josh Howard, Adrian Griffin, and you had um, Diop, and yeah, you had a variety of players. So when you look at that season, the 61 season, making it to the finals, what sticks out about? Oh, Jerry Stackhouse, yep, yeah, that was a pretty good team. That went to the finals. Let's talk about that journey from that season and what stands out to you guys from that year.
Sure. Go ahead, Don.
Oh, thanks, Rolo. I was gonna say, so this is the year where the dimey guy starts watching basketball, and I will say this about this Mavs team: this was a great team, and an underrated piece that I feel like is so forgotten about in NBA circles. Josh Howard. This guy was a bucket, man. Sadly ruined by injuries, but that team with Josh Howard, Jason Terry, Dirk, a young Devin Harris, and then they had Stack coming off the bench was a really good team. And I think what was so interesting about this season was that the Mavericks actually had the second best record in the West. But because the NBA still went by the divisional rules, they were actually the 4 seed in the first round, even though they had the second best record in the conference. So that was so weird. The Clippers, I remember they intentionally lost the game in the end of the season against the Grizzlies. So we would have to play the Denver Nuggets in the first round and not the Grizzlies or the Mavs. So the Nuggets were actually the 3 seed, but they had a way worse record than the Mavs. They actually had the 7th best record in the conference, and they were the 3 seed, and the Mavs were the 4, and the Clippers got to play them first round. Total finesse. And then that's why you obviously had the Mavs play the Spurs in the second round, which was 260-win teams playing in the second round. That, to this day, to me, is maybe the best second-round series of my life. I mean, the quality was just amazing. But, yeah, that's what I got for that so far.
That's awesome, Dom. Yeah, I appreciate that breakdown, bro. So what I recall from that series, um, the Portland series was no, I'm sorry, not the Portland series. The San Antonio Spurs series. That's when Dirk had that shot where he went up to try to was it dunk it or try to lay it up or whatever, and he got fouled by Manu. I believe that's the series that happened. So it was just crazy because you're right. It was 260-win behemoths going at it in the second round, and it was kind of crazy that they
That
were
was a
both
7-game series. 2 games in overtime. Yeah,
And
man, that's a
you know,
that's a
you know
definitely
what's
series I want to rewatch.
what's funny too, Malika? The Spurs went down 3-1 in the series, and then they won the next 2 games, brought it back to Game 7 in San Antonio. And me as a 7-year-old kid, I'm like, oh my god, Dallas just blew a 3-1 lead. Like,
Yep, yep,
it's gonna.
yep.
And then that Game 7 is the one that Rolo's referencing. Such a classic. And I also
It's
want to give
yeah, it
Dirk
went overtime. A
it was
definite
amazing.
classic.
I also want to give Dirk a shout out in the first round against Pau Gasol's Grizzlies. He hit a game winner in Memphis that just doesn't get really talked about because it was a sweep, but he hit a game winner in Memphis, and I want to give Dirk his flowers since it's a Dirk space. The man, in terms of clutch, he was one of those that you just were so scared as the opposing team because he could get a shot off on anybody. So it's just a matter of if it's going to go in or not. But yeah, and a key piece of that series, Adrian Griffin was starting, if I'm not mistaken, and then they subbed him out and started someone else. But I forget if it was they put Devin Harris in the starting lineup or Jason Terry in the starting lineup. But I don't know. You guys might remember that better than me. But I remember Adrian Griffin started in the beginning of that series, and they made a change.
Yeah, it was Adrian Griffin, and it was kind of interesting that they did make that change because I thought that Griff played fairly well pretty much the entire series. So I was always wondering why they coaches' decisions, I guess. But I mean, I think it was Jet that ended up starting if I remember correctly. But yeah, I mean it was a great series. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that Memphis series, namely because like you said, Dime, it was a sweep, but it was just the Mavs seemed destined to make it to the finals that year, and it just ended up working out. The finals, though, that's that's a sore subject for me for sure. So, I mean, I don't know if Chico or anybody else wants to talk about anything else that
Is
happened
there
in
is there any? I
before
mean,
that.
with the Suns,
Highway
they
robbery. Highway robbery. Enough said.
Oh yeah, we can jump over the Suns to go into Miami. I mean,
No.
We
Let's.
got to give Dirk his credit for that 50-point game against the Suns.
Yes, yes.
As a little kid who just saw Suns beat both LA teams, man, that was so satisfying seeing Dirk just destroy them like that.
Right. So when you look at it, the series in the Memphis series where they swept Memphis and Dirk hit the game winner, I was like, this feels different. Then they go on to play the San Antonio Spurs in the second round. 7-game series, 2 overtime games. Dirk hits a crazy layup over Manu, like his whole body twisted, and he Took it home. All right, so we got over the big brother Spurs. That felt good. Then we went on to play the Suns. We beat them 4-2 to get a win over Steve Nash, the guy that left, his best friend, for him to drop 50, that was satisfying. I was like, all right, so he got through his European brother in Pau Gasol. He got through his big brother in Tim Duncan, and he got through his best friend in Steve Nash. This is definitely some kind of emotional roller coaster for him. So the finals should be the next step taken where we finally get to secure one. And I'm going to let somebody else take the reins for the finals because it's still a sore subject for me.
Yeah, because the Mavericks started off 2-0 in that series.
Cooking. We were cooking. We
Destroying
were
them.
up on
Destroying
in
them.
game 3. We were up like 15 points, I believe, too. At one point, it was horrible.
And then the tables turned, as you all talked about. So let's talk about the finals. Who wants to take this and talk about the pain of dropping 4 games in a row, and one of them in OT? The game 6 was in overtime.
I'll defer on this one if they want to open up the can of emotions first before I give my neutral perspective.
Oh, man, where do I start? Okay, so we start off 2-0. You know what? Plan the parade. Isn't that what Mark Cuban said? He said something like, yeah, we're planning the parade right now. And definitely the parade was supposed to take place. And I'm not into conspiracy theories, but I definitely feel like we were robbed of this championship due to referee experience. What's the guy's name? Tim Donaghy. He already admitted to a couple of things. Trust me. The free throw attempts of Dwayne Wade was ridiculous. The amount of fouls that they said took place that didn't was crazy. Um, the amount of fouls that they did not call on the other end is telling because you can tell by Dirk's shooting percentage. He shot like 39% from the floor, 25 or 29% from three in that series. And that, no matter how bad of a series or of a game or of a season Dirk is having, he's very efficient. So for them to roughhouse him and then just scream David Hasselhoff at the free throw, and he missed. It was telling. Uh, I will say that Pat Riley, as the head coach, did do some things differently that I thought were pretty smart because I remember in the first 2 games, as soon as Dwayne Wade crossed half court, he would double him. But Pat Riley started letting Dwayne Wade to bring the ball up the court instead of meeting the double team. So it was a couple of like coaching stuff that I wasn't pleased with in terms of Avery Johnson as well. But it's a very sad. I was in a sports depression after that because I was a young 16-year-old pup.
Yeah, just listening to you discuss it, Chico. Yeah, just brought back all those memories, man, for sure. Yeah, I mean, agree. Up 2-0, we're up pretty big in game 3 as well, and then all of a sudden it was just it was the ref show, and I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole conspiracy theory. There, it's all out. Whatever anybody wants to look up, they could look up. I do recall though that was at the height of Mark Cuban getting fined for, fucking with the refs all the time. He was always talking shit. I know that David Stern probably didn't like him, didn't want him to win a championship or something. I have no idea, man. It was just wild. But yeah, there were. I remember thinking Udonis Haslam had the series of his life, but I don't know if it was more so he was allowed to get away with a little bit more physicality on Dirk than what was previously allowed. The Heat were able to get physical, but whenever the Mavericks got equally physical, we were getting called for fouls. So I remember that disparity. It just seemed like very, very apparent. But yeah, I mean, the Mavericks, after they lost those first 2, after being up 2-0, and then that game 5, man, it was just horrible. Like you could see they were just being deflated, as the series wore on, and uh, credit to like Chico said, credit to Pat Riley, credit to Dwayne Wade for his athleticism was in full display at that point in time. The guy was just that's when he was known as the Flash. Because he'd get in from end to end, and he was just jumping up, blocking shots. It was just crazy, man. Shaq was still doing his, Shaquille O'Neal things there towards the tail end of his career. And so, like again, I think Zoe was there, Lonzo Mourning. He had some impact on a couple of games there. But yeah, it was a terrible, frustrating loss as a fan watching it because I just felt like there was it was definitely not being evenly officiated, but at the same time, you know uh, shout out to the Heat. They did what they did, and whenever they won, I remember vividly Dwayne Wade throwing the ball up there in game 6, and that was just man, I just hated that those guys were celebrating on our floor. That was crazy.
Yeah, just wanted to add one little more thing. Um, I just wanted to give Dirk some bigger flowers because if you go down the roster, the kind of players that Dirk took to the finals was ridiculous. Josh Hart was definitely not in his prime as yet. Marquise Daniels definitely not. Jason Terry starting at point guard, out of position. You know what I mean? We have Eric Dampier, who has not done shit since he became a Maverick. We got Zagana Job, who was a good defensive center, but very weak at rebounding. He was good at the post, but he couldn't score, so he was raw. Then you have a washed Jerry Stockhouse and a very washed Keith Van Horn. So, in terms of like the roster that he took to the finals, completely impressive.
And Dime, you and Micah, you got something you want to say before Dime goes?
Yeah, I will say this one thing. This is what I noticed from like back in the league before that. I think his is kind of leaving the game to where like the in that era the bets were like they were just better. Like the dudes, like they were like number ones on their respective teams, and then just but still having something left in the tank. And I don't feel like you really see that as much in the league anymore. It's like if you look at that Heat team, like yeah, I'll say it all day. I know we got robbed. It's just like if you just look at the tape, there's times that is getting called for foul where there was a player within 5 feet of him. Like, but that's neither here. But still, I mean, if you look at like that Heat team, the best that they had, like having Zoe, they had Gary Payton, um, and just different vets that can contribute. But man, it looks like today your vets are JaVale McGee and DeAndre Jordan and shit. I don't know, but
Hop in there, Dime.
Well, this finals for me, it was my first NBA finals. Actually, I watched as a kid, so like I haven't rewatched it. I have very vivid memories from it, but in terms of the exact X's and O's, why the Mavs blew the lead, I can't really tell you. But I will say this as a neutral fan. As a little kid, I do even remember myself saying that D Wade was getting very generous calls. Whether that's the reason the Mavericks lost, I don't know. I'd have to go back and rewatch the series. But I will say this: home-centric officiating has always existed in the NBA. You can go back to even earlier decades, and even current, series in recent memory. Home-centric, they'll always get generous calls. This was definitely one of those examples, albeit maybe an extreme one. But the true answer is why the Mavs lost. I got to go back and watch the calls, but I will say this mentally, and we're going to get into it in a little bit, but mentally, Dirk Nowitzki in 2011 was a different beast. Like, he wasn't phased like that the same way he was in 06 and 07. And we're going to get into 07 next, so perfect segue for you.
Yeah, when we look at the Mavericks the next season after making the finals, they were out in the first round versus the We Believe Warriors. Was it? Yeah, the We Believe Warriors. I think it was. That's the one with Baron Davis and Stephen
Yeah,
Jackson.
and they won
yep.
67 games the next year. They were like determined to get back there.
67 games. Like they won 67 games and we're out in the first round. We got to
Sorry,
talk
I can't
about
hear Malika, so I'll come back. I'll drop and come back.
Okay, like thank you, Sheik. But yeah, 67 wins and then out in the first round. I remember that like I remember like this was like a big thing on sports radio. So yeah, let's get into that season. Avery Johnson getting them, having a great they had a great regular season, but then got to the playoffs and we believe knocked them out. Let's talk about it.
So I want to start off by saying before we get to the playoffs, the Mavericks had two opportunities to take the Warriors out before they could even get into the playoffs, and they didn't take either advantage of either time to, especially the last time, to be able to knock those pesky Warriors off. And that, of course, the Warriors were being coached by Don Nelson, and Don Nelson is the one coach that knew, um, you know, uh, basically raised Nowitzki, created him, so he knew how to play Dirk the best way. He knew how to mess with him and get in his mind, get in his head, get in his body, just mess with him enough to where you would frustrate him. So, that was the only time that I ever saw Dirk extremely frustrated in every single game that he played. And that's what pissed me off about the I think it was the last game that they played against the Warriors. Avery Johnson pulled the starters like way early. Like it was stupid to me because it was like, why are you guys not trying to take these guys out? Get these guys out of the playoffs. Don't even let them creep in. And because we didn't win, that was one of the games that they needed to get into the playoffs. And they got into the playoffs, and of course, they since they'd won the season series, I believe they felt that they could beat, and they did. They beat the Mavericks. I mean, straight up. I mean, I think it was Steven Jackson that was, talking shit to Dirk. I know Baron Davis was was talking smack. Um, I'm trying to remember who else. Was David West part of that team. I believe. I think David West was part of the Warriors at that time. Um, but yeah, man,
They
it
had
was just
Matt Barnes too.
what's that?
Yeah, Matt Barnes was on that team.
Oh, Barnes. Yeah,
On that.
Barnes was on that team. Yeah, I mean, it was just a collective of guys that they had a feeling that they could beat this Mavericks team, and they took it to them, man. And it was really really sad. And again, we had talked about it earlier. I have to say that this is at the crest of when the soft European tag was put on Dirk. Because obviously since they lost in the first round against the eighth seeded Warriors that they let, like I said, sneak into the playoffs. And to top, to make things worse, it was the year that Dirk actually won his MVP. So that he wanted to leave the country, he was getting out of here, and the NBA had called him and said that he had to come back to accept the award, and he went back reluctantly to accept it. Of course, he's going to accept his MVP award, league MVP award, but he just was not happy because of what ended up happening. Go ahead, Chico.
Yeah, so exactly what I remember from the season is they had several chances to not see the Warriors a couple of times in the playoffs, and they blew that. Also, once again, we have the starting backcourt of Jason Terry and Devin Harris, which is super small, not as efficient in terms of Devin Harris, and the playmaking was not there. But Dirk once again carried this team to 67 wins and a number one seed. But in terms of the first round loss to the We Believe Warriors, it was definitely like no kind of conspiracy, no kind of like fluke. It was definitely the effort that the Golden State Warriors put out at the time. And now Don Nelson is the head coach. So he definitely outcoached Avery Johnson. Then you have like just some super young dudes on the team who was just ready to play. You had like Andres Biedrins, like Steven Jackson, even though he said that he has Dirk's game in his pocket. I don't understand why he would say that. But just because of that, it was a very depressing year. You could actually see in Dirk's face, receiving the MVP trophy after being sent home in the second round, the wet hair, everything just looked, he just wasn't doing well.
First round. First round.
Yeah, first round. No, I'm saying like he received the MVP trophy when the NBA playoffs
Oh,
were in the
right,
second
right,
round. He was
right.
already home, so that's kind of sad.
Because he had an amazing season that year. Like, he had such an amazing season. And for it to end the way that it did, I remember, like, my goodness, like, he was the most valuable player, that season. A member of the 50-40-90 club that season. Like, man, he did some serious work. He was first team that year. All NBA first team. I mean, so many accolades. And man, the year before he was the 3-point champion. Just like, so yeah, Dirk Nowitzki had a history before 2011 finals. Proof of that. And the following year they lost to the New Orleans Hornets in the first round. That's Chris Paul. Chris Paul was on that team. Anything you guys want to say about that one, or we could just keep it moving because those were back to back first round losses.
I mean, it was back to back to back. It was like all
The
first
year
round.
after that, it was
Well,
the semis. This year after that, it was the semis. Though they won 50 games, but got to the semis.
Well, I don't know if you guys touched on why part of what the reason they lost was, but like the Warriors were, it was kind of a preview of kind of like the modern NBA in ways where they went really small and they put like big wings like Steven Jackson, Al Harrington, and Matt Barnes on Dirk. And that was to me, I don't know if I could be wrong, Mavs fans, you can correct me, but I don't remember Dirk having that one-legged fade yet. Like he was getting pushed out of the post so far. And I remember Barkley calling him out in commentary, like he's letting me down. He's not taking advantage of these smaller guys. And then by 2011, he would just catch the ball at the elbow and just rise up over the top. Like it was nothing.
Yeah,
Um,
the one-legged fade came about like around the 2008 2009 season.
there you
Like
go.
he definitely do like regular basic turnaround fadeaway jumpers.
And it was tough. They were like right in his airspace. I feel like that leg created that little bit of room.
Yeah, so his personal trainer Holger, I forget his name. Holger just told him that he should implement the one-legged fade to separate him and the defender around 2008 2009. That's when the real Dirk Nowitzki came about.
Yeah, he started working on that. Yeah, I think it was actually that the summer after that 2000 the Warriors. He started working on that one-legged fade. He just didn't really implement it or didn't really start using it a lot more until the 2008 2009 season. But and even then, he was using it sparingly. It wasn't really until 2010 2011 when people really started noticing him getting that separation, just that little bit extra, like you said, Don, just a little bit of room to be able to rise up and just hit those. Because everybody was trying to block that fadeaway, man. Everybody was trying to get up there and trying to get it. Not too many people can get up that way and get it.
As for 2008, Alika, I don't got much to say about that. I just do think we should acknowledge that that is the season where Jason Kidd was traded to the Mavs in effort to give Dirk a second star. I feel like I would love to hear the Mavs fans' opinion on that because I remember when that happened, I was like, oh my God, like this is the piece. This is it. And it didn't really materialize right away. Although I do want to say, and it brings me because I was tweeting about this today, that 2008 Western Conference was ridiculous. Like there was 9 teams that were all like second round quality kind of teams.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was, during those years, I mean, the West was like a murderer's row pretty much. You had the Lakers, you had the Spurs, you had the Kings, you had the Mavericks. Later on in those years, you had the Pelicans. You always had the grit and grind Grizzlies. You had the Trailblazers. I mean, people, they called them the Jailblazers back then. So I mean, it was kind of crazy. The West was definitely stacked. So it was just it was a tough. That's why when Dirk was able to finally get his championship, that's why it meant so much to obviously a lot of people rooted for him just because he was finally able to get. He had to get through who he had to get through. He had to get through the Trailblazers and then the Lakers and then the what is it the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then finally get there. So I mean, it was just like I said, the West had always, in those definitely in the Dirk's early years up until when he won the championship, it was always like a murderer's row. Then go ahead, Malika.
No, I was just gonna move because the next season, Rick Carlisle, Rick Carlisle is brought in 2008, 2009, and then now we're in the Rick Carlisle years. Anything you guys want to say about the Avery Johnson to Rick Carlisle kind of transition, at all?
Everybody say Mavericks.
um, I think that it was pretty much time. I think Avery had taken the Mavericks as far as they can go. And Avery had taken them from Don Nelson. When he took over, and I think that at that point in time, Dirk had gotten to the point where him and Avery Johnson weren't really. I wouldn't say that they weren't getting along. I just think that it was just time for a new voice, and I think that it was really interesting. I had always thought that Rick Carlisle was a good coach, that had bad luck because I mean, if I remember whenever he left Indiana, I don't know if they ended up going to the playoffs a whole bunch of times. Then when he went to Detroit, like right after he ended up getting ousted there, they ended up going to the finals and I think winning, as well. And so I really thought that he never really had his due or his shot to take the team all the way to the promised land. So I was really happy when Rick Carlisle got the job in Dallas. I felt like Mark Cuban was really trying to get somebody in that was going to help Dirk maybe get over that, get to that, get them both over that championship hump. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it was just time. I think that Avery and Dirk had run their course, and there wasn't really much they could do together from that point. And so it was a breath to to be where it was when it first started to be how it is where it ended. Originally, it was a breath of fresh air. We'll see. Once we get further along, we'll talk about Rick later on towards the end of his tenure after or near when Dirk retired as well. I guess if we get into that.
And when you look at, like the Rick Carlisle season, the Rick Carlisle's first season, the Mavericks made it to the second round. They beat in the first round of the playoffs. They beat the San Antonio Spurs and lost to the Nuggets that year. But it was Rick Carlisle's first season. I mean, of course, Dirk made an all NBA first team. He was like all star. Do we really care about that? But he was no, he was second team that year. He was second team. My fault. But anything we want to say about that particular season?
Might be the most forgettable Spurs Mavs series I can recall. I have trouble even remembering it, mainly because they get mixed together. The '09 and 2010, they played each other in the first round both years in a row.
Yeah,
Mavs
they
fans
did.
might have a
Yeah.
much better lens, so love to hear.
Yeah, we can move on. It looks like there's.
No, I want to hear though. Shake had his hand up about the series. I kind of want to hear.
Oh, go ahead, Sheik. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, definitely do not remember that Spurs Mavs first round series where we won. Like for some reason, it's just kind of sketchy or like blurry. I really don't remember it.
Is it just me or is he not talking?
Yeah,
He's talking. So you may want to exit and come back. He is talking.
Yeah, he's talking. Don.
yeah, space has been tripping, man.
Yeah, go ahead, Chico. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I do remember the Nuggets series that we lost in the second round. What
Yeah,
did we lose 4-1? I can't remember.
I
I
think
think.
so.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, because I definitely remember us being up in several of those games, and it was one particular play where Carlisle was asking Anton Wright, who was the starting two guard at the time, to foul Melo, who just went ahead and hit a 3-pointer. He literally wrapped Melo up like in his arms and fouled him. Refs called nothing. Melo shot that three, game winner, series was done, and that was definitely the series where um my disdain for Mark Cuban grew. That's when he was harassing Kenyon Martin's mom and told his mom that her son is a thug. So that's where my disdain for Mark Cuban grew.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that I remember that's Carmelo Anthony was still there, right? So I remember I think Carmelo Anthony was busting our ass pretty good, in that series. So that's the only thing that I remember taking away, other than the Kenyon Martin. Well, that I think that's when Kenyon Martin just hated anything Dallas related, whether it was Cuban or Mavericks or Dirk or anything like that. It always seemed to be like he had a specific vendetta against Dallas or anything Dallas related. Just ever since then. So it was no surprise earlier this year when Houston came out and busted our ass. He was there laughing along.
Yeah. Also during that Nuggets Mavs series, it was a big one of the, like, if y'all want to look at it again, I think it was like game 4 we won, or maybe game 3. Melo and Dirk both dropped like 40 points in the game. It was a real back and forth thing. And fun fact, Dirk is one of only 4 players to average 25 and 11 rebounds in his playoff career.
Crazy. I mean, crazy, which is one of the indictments I give on the Mavericks from those years is some of the roster construction um, to help them get over that hump. Um, because we're like I'm just like we get next year after that they lost in the first round, so let's go on to they lost in the first round and then they won the finals in 2011. We're up to 2000 the 2011 season. 2011 is when they won 57 games, and now we're going into the 2011 playoffs or anything from that season. We could start with anything from that season that stands out before we go through their playoff run that particular year through the West first. Go ahead, Sheik. Just jump in.
All right. So the previous year was when we, did a trade with the Washington Wizards. We sent Josh Howard over along with a couple other things. I can't remember the package, but we got back Karan Butler, Deshaun Stevenson, and Hayward. So even though that season within itself was a wash, jumping into the 2010 2011 season was amazing. We traded for Tyson Chandler, literally for like maybe a second round pick and a bag of chips. So that alone changed the dynamic. He had an amazing run at I think it was like the FIBA World Championship as the starting center for Team USA. And he was actually supposed to be traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder, but he had like a stub toe, so they waived the physical. So we jumped on it, and it just paid dividends from the start. We jumped out very quickly in the season. We were the number 1 seed for the majority of when the season opened, up until January when Caron Butler actually went down and tore his ACL. And we fell to the 4th seed because Dirk actually went down with a meniscus tear as well. So for us to finish the season off as the 4th seed, losing our first and second best scorer that was on the team at the time was amazing. So just having Deshaun Stevenson step up and Jason Terry step up in their absences during the regular season was amazing.
Yeah, Sean Marion. Um, yeah, you guys had a good Pacer was on. Yeah, you guys had a good squad. But yeah, that was a lot going on in 2011. I mean, that was for them to when you think about where they finished, like in that season, would people think that they would end up being the champions that year? Just amazing what adversity they overcame that season. Just amazing adversity. Anything about the regular season? Go ahead, Micah. Jump in.
I mean, just like when you look at the playoff run in its entirety, and it's just I think that's why it's so upsetting. Like when you look at construction now, even though it was not as good as it could have been at that time, but at the same time, it's like damn, it's so disappointing we got this generational talent, but even when they had an all-time great that was getting towards the end of his career, they actually was trying to put pieces around him, and I don't see that effort now. Like you look at that squad in its entirety, and just um, you brought him up just now. The Matrix was amazing that year, and it's just it felt like we was actually able to somewhat put together a team back then, and it just don't seem that way now.
I don't remember, but wasn't he acquired also via trade? Wasn't it from the Heat or was it from the Suns?
Who's
I
that?
don't.
I
Sean
think
Marion.
I think he's at the Suns. I think we got him from the Suns.
Yeah, it was just a great trade to get Sean Marion over, especially what he ended up being for Dallas, which is basically the Swiss Army knife defender, pretty much doing everything and even scoring when we needed him to. So yeah, I mean, I remember Sean Marion being a vital cog. Chico already said Tyson Chandler was key for Dirk to be able to do what Dirk needed to do, and he didn't have to worry about as much defensively. I mean, he still efforted, right? That's what the coach wanted, was just an effort on the defensive end. But Tyson Chandler definitely cleaned up the backside and helped with all of that, which leads into later on, and as we continue discussing just how mad I. That's when this is when my villain origin story starts with Mark Cuban, because of the way he just dicked around with Tyson Chandler. I just can't stand that guy. That for me, it's just an effective eventual dicking around with Dirk. But yeah, I mean, go ahead. I think Micah first, and then Chico. Go ahead, Micah.
I mean, I'll say this. This is another thing. Man, I wish we could have got him just one season earlier, so he could have got him a ring. Wish we could have got Vince Carter just one season earlier. Like, cause on the cool, like they wasn't gonna win nothing in 2012, but those were still some fun games. Like on the cool.
Man, again, we'll get to 2012 once we're done with 2011. But I really really think that had Mark not dicked around and decided to pay Tyson, give him his contract, and just basically bring the band back together, especially since that was a lockout shortened season. I think the Mavericks could have made a serious run there. But anyway, we'll get back to that here in a second.
Let's
Go
get
ahead,
to
Chico.
yeah, let's get to Chic, and then let's go through the their breeze pretty much after the first round through the Western Conference finals. I'm looking at the time, and wow, we definitely spent some time digging in. Go ahead, Sheik.
Yeah, sorry about that. But definitely just wanted to add in like a couple of more pointers about that 2010-2011 regular season. That was the introduction of JJ Barea, who was an integral part of winning that championship. Also, the late acquisitions of Peja Stojakovic from Toronto, and then picking up Corey Brewer off waivers was very important for that team.
Yeah, we can go ahead and skim through. I mean, the only thing I wanted to say about the Portland series was that Portland, ended up coming back and they ended up tying it, going 3-3 and making it into the game seven. And the Mavericks were getting the whole, they're choking, or Dirk being soft label again.
That
You
series
know,
went six.
oh, six. Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Uh, yeah, that's the series that gave them the most challenge was the first round. After that, it was pretty much.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
coasted against the Lakers.
yeah, they swept the Lakers. Oklahoma City Thunder was like they had a loss in game two, an overtime game in game four, but it was a 4-1. It was a 4-1.
Gentlemen
Kind
Freak.
of,
Yeah.
and then we get to Miami, which pretty much started off with an L. In Miami. Let's go through and talk about. And I put an interesting quote from Dirk up on a jumbotron that I looked through and found today, and we'll talk a little bit about this also. But let's talk about this series with the Miami Heat. What do you guys remember about when you think about them facing the big three? You know, like really within their first year. Anything like going into that series, did you think you guys had a shot against the LeBron, D Wade, Chris Bosh Heat?
Just want to quickly breeze through the Western Conference run. Um, I think we got lucky in the first round because Brandon Roy actually was injured and he was just coming back from injury. So Wesley Matthews was actually their starting two guard at the time. And it was Brandon Roy who actually came back in games to actually win both of those games. But because he was on minutes restriction, like he couldn't really play the entire game. Into the second round, I just wanted to give props to JJ Barea, Jason Terry, and Peja Stojakovic for at the time like setting 3 pointers made records. And then in the Western Conference Finals against the Oklahoma City, Dirk had one of the best playoff performances you'll ever imagine. He shot like maybe 23 of 25 from the field. He didn't miss a single free throw. It was the most efficient playoff game that you would ever see. Now on to the finals. I definitely felt like we could have won because the Mavericks beat the Heat twice in the regular season. The first time we beat them, it was what caused turmoil. It was like when LeBron bumped Eric Spoelstra during that game, and it caused them to like everybody was like, oh, the Heat are done, or maybe they're going through some shit. And then the second time, they were on the 11-game win streak, and then we beat them again and snapped that win streak. So I definitely went in thinking we could win.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I think when I started believing that we were going to win was when we swept the Lakers, especially when everybody was thinking that the Lakers are going to just come in and hand us our ass, because they just come off of one winning two, I believe, finals, the previous two finals. So I think that was just one of those things that, where okay, we defeated the defending champion, and then so we were able to gentlemen sweep the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, but it was tough to take that first game loss, and I started to see demons popping up again. Game two. But man, credit to Dirk and Jet and guys fighting back from 15 down in the fourth quarter. I think in the last, what was it, like 5 minutes or something? I don't remember if it was like 4 minutes and 30 seconds. It was crazy. Um, and that's when I really, really believed. I was like, okay, we're witnessing something special. Even when Dirk didn't have the best of games in the finals, he was still widely efficient, except for one game, I believe. But other than that, I mean, he was hitting him with lefty layups, just smooth shot after shot. The defense was on point, Matrix, and Jet was playing really good defense as well. So um, I still remember gasping though when Dwayne Wade was launched that 3 pointer, right outside the half court line. I thought, man, because it pretty good, and then it was just glad that it bounced out, and then Dirk was just a man possessed. You'd see him, and he was just red. They were all surprised, and he was just there. He was just taking over. Go ahead, Chico.
Yeah, definitely. That game two win where, Dwayne Wade hit that corner three and then he and LeBron, left there shooting a hand up in front of the Mavericks fans during the timeout. That's what really changed the dynamic of that series because they was like, yeah, we can't let these guys embarrass us like this anymore. So it really flipped the script. Definitely Dirk was in a whole different mood. The one-legged fadeaway was in full effect because in 2006, Udonis Haslem was his primary defender, and he kind of troubled him. But this year, it was completely different. He worked Chris Bosh, he worked Joel Anthony, he worked Udonis Haslem, and it was really good stopping Eric Dampier, who switched teams, to stop him from getting the ring. I just wanted to shout out the custodian Brian Cardinal for playing such a tough series. Also, Jan Mahimi spelled his best Tyson Chandler because he went down with an injury in one of those games and he did his best. Jason Terry, who was primarily defended by LeBron James, had a great series. So in that series, we didn't play any of Stojakovic because he was slow-footed. He was getting beat all the time. So I just wanted to. That's when I said, Rick Carlisle is a great coach. And then Dirk played the flu game. They mocked him. Dwayne Wade and LeBron James. That's where my disdain for them came from. Mocking one of the all-time greats who doesn't miss games, especially due to illnesses. And they came out, whooped their ass, dressed in all black at the last game, beat them, fulfilled everything that I was waiting for as a teenage kid into my adulthood. I will hold on to 2011 forever. They want me to let it go, but I will never.
Go ahead, Malika.
No, you guys are, talk, you guys are, like it went, loss win until we get to the final two games when the Mavericks just sealed it in Miami in game 6. So when you look at, when Dirk finished, was like enough of them, enough of these guys, after game 4 when the series was basically even. We get to game 5 and the game 5 was at home in Dallas and they get that W and then crystallizes it in Miami on their home court. So they had to watch them. They celebrated on their floor that win. Talk about that elation and what it was like for Dallas to win 3 games in a row. So make these guys, we're going to go through in terms of talking about 2011, we're going to, take your time to go through this series because the next time I speak, it'll be like pushing us towards Dirk's twilight years, and we'll close out. But go ahead, guys. Talk about those 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I just remember, um, you know, that game 2 comeback. So then, the them losing game 3 and then winning 4, 5, and 6, and closing them out in Miami just felt so right. When years before, the Heat closed the Mavericks out on the Mavericks floor. So I just felt like it just came full circle. I was really really happy for Dirk. I remember him jumping over the what is it that I don't know if it was a bench to go to the locker room, and then somebody had to go get him because they wanted him to be out on the floor, obviously, to receive the trophy, and then the MVP, the Finals MVP as well. But he just wanted a moment to himself for himself, which is something so raw and something so real and emotional, that he was fighting years, tooth and nail to win this championship, to get to, as I said, to climb the mountain, to ascend to the top and be the best NBA team for at least, one season. And for it to happen the way it happened, I felt, I don't know about you guys, but I felt like the collective of every fan, just really rooting for Dirk and wanting to stick it to Dirk, to stick it to LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, because here was a team that was gloating that they're going to win 6 or 7 or I don't know how many championships that they said they were going to win, and they had made it to the finals when maybe some people didn't expect them to be there that first season. They made it the way they made it, and so yeah, for Dirk to essentially, a lot of people say steal one from LeBron, right? So he stole a championship from LeBron, was for me just deserve. For me, I look at it as,
And it is his shame on his resume to this day. It's the 2011 finals.
yeah, I mean, I look at it like it wasn't a stolen one from LeBron, even though a lot of people will look at it that way. I feel like it was just getting even with Dwayne Wade. And we'll never be able to obviously play the rubber match between Dirk and Wade, but I would have loved to have seen that. I always say the Mavericks don't really have a true rival in the Western Conference. Their rival is the Miami Heat because they played them for the highest stakes possible 2 times. So hopefully, eventually, it gets to the point where they play that rubber match. But we'll see.
Go ahead, Micah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say this. That was Dirk's "I took it personal" moment. Whenever he saw LeBron and D Wade mocking him, saying, acting that he was faking sick when he took a because he got beat, and then he just went out and did him in, and yeah, there it was probably only a few possessions, but still, still kind of funny. LeBron got locked up by JJ Barea. That happens. So, like, that happened. But, I mean, I have to agree. I will always hold on to it because they were counted out every single series that they played. And they just took it to everybody.
And they closed
Like,
the deal for real. Just let me just anybody that in the audience that would like to come up and talk about the Mavs. We're now in the 2011 finals. Feel free to join us. Raise your hand. But go ahead, Micah. Continue.
but I mean, yeah, so it was just a great all around series. And yeah, to close D Wade out, that was probably the best part of it because yeah, I'll die on this hill. I know they stole that chip from us in '06, like, and that's the same, but it happened. So to just finally after all this time get over that hump, and it's just like it's sometimes I'm not gonna lie, it is one thing that concerns me sometimes is if after that chip, like even though he probably has top two player, wherever you want to rank him right now. I sometimes worry if that one chip just satisfied Cuban and like
I was
pretty
just
much.
about to ask that. He has his chip, so you think some of the fire isn't there anymore because he got his chip, and why? Because he should be building better around Luca than he is. So I was wondering if you guys could answer that. And Micah,
Yeah,
you finish, and then Sheik jump in.
Yeah, so before we move on, I just wanted to say once again, I wanted to give flowers to Rick Carlisle at the time. At that time, he was just coaching amazingly. I've never seen a coach use his team from one to player number 15, like in a playoff run. At one point in a game, we had to throw out Corey Brewer against the Lakers to change the dynamic of the game. Then we had pay. It was just amazing. Just seeing Brian Cardinal do some damage to the Heat for like 10 minutes. It was an amazingly like he outcoached Spo, who was right now a brilliant coach, and I just was very happy for Dirk watching him jump over the little I don't know what it was, maybe a bench. He needed that moment to himself, seeing him finally get over the hump. And to be honest, if he did not win in 2011, I don't think there would have been as much player and fan adulation for Dirk as there is now. You see.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with you. But any other comments here about Cuban? Do you think Cuban this finals and him getting that championship? Do you think this satisfied his competitive fire at all? Like, how
yeah,
you
I
feeling?
absolutely do. I absolutely think that for him, he's running the Mavericks organization as a for profit business now. And if he's not making office, and he doesn't really care about, he's not trying to pay the taxes. I mean, as evidenced by the last, what was it, 12 years, he hasn't paid into the. He's going to have to this year, but he hadn't paid into the luxury tax in almost 12 years. And so for me, I just think that a lot of people say, well, he was going big game hunting, big fish hunting, as we found out, later on, definitely after Dirk's twilight years and into Luca's years now. It's been predominantly they haven't even had meetings with big fish. It was just them saying, "Oh, we are going to chase somebody," but other than what going after DeAndre Jordan one season, pitching Deron Williams, even though Mark Cuban was too busy on Shark Tank to go to the pitch meeting and trusting Donnie Nelson by saying, "Oh, just trust us," instead of actually laying out a plan. There's just been a lot of stuff. To me, there's definitely been a high level of complacency, not only for Kid, but actually I think the whole. I mean, for not Kid, I'm sorry, for Cuban, but the whole front office. It was also Rick Carlisle. It was also Donnie Nelson. The front office at that time. Go ahead, Chico. What's up?
Yeah, I think now maybe Mark Cuban runs his franchise like as a business currently. Um, I think at the time his reasoning for not re-signing half of the championship roster was kind of, like sensible, like because he did get a sit down with Dwight Howard. He did offer Darren Williams a max contract, so I get what he was trying to do. It didn't pan out. Tyson Chandler went on to win Defensive Player of the Year in New York. And he did come back on another 1 year rental where they still let him walk again. But it is what it is. I know, Malika, we had the space going for a while, so we could just run straight through Dirk's Twilight years because not much happened. It was just a revolving door of bad rosters and a very nice retirement at the end.
Yeah, my thing with Dirk after, like, and even he admitted, I did want to point out this quote where he says, basically, what I got from it is they were lucky they got the big three their first year. They didn't figure they learned a lot from, I think the big three in Miami learned a lot from that series, LeBron, Chris Bosh, and D Wade, from that series, but they didn't figure themselves out yet. And him pointing that out. But after 2011, they were swept the following year, in the first round. Um, Dirk even noted, like there were a few years he didn't make the playoffs. Um, Dirk even noted that he should have retired a few years before he did, because now, like, he will always have problems with one of his legs, or like a few things going on with him. Um, so his quality of life, at least he's still walking, but it's it can be painful for him. So when I think of Dirk, it's like he gave his body to this game, and like I'm watching Kimba do the same thing. Give his body gave their body to the game. So when you look at Dirk in his twilight years, what year do you guys think he should have retired? And do you also think Luca will stay? And we can merge into talking about. You can go around talk about Dirk's twilight years, and then we can talk about. We can end talking about your current team and how you guys feel, especially at the injury news that just came out today. Yeah, let's go there. Twilight years. You go around talk about that, and we could end it talking about the current team and how long you think Luca. With our current, the way the NBA now is with free agency, how long do you think Luca would stay in Dallas? Go ahead.
So I'm, Dirk's twilight years. Like I said, after he won the championship, I really felt like, especially since it was a lockout shortened season, I really think that they had an opportunity to, keep the team together. Mark Cuban and Donnie Nelson should have offered Tyson Chandler the long term security he was looking for. They could have always traded him away later on, but he was still playing at the high level of defense that he was. So it could have been a little bit different. I feel other things to include there. Obviously, they had very competitive, first round series, especially that one. I recall that Vince Carter shot where he shot the 3-pointer to win against San Antonio. I think take it to Game 7, where they eventually lost. But other than that, I think that Dirk probably should have retired maybe a year or two before, especially since his ankle was giving him problems. He was already moving a little bit slower, but I think that he really wanted to. He said, if I'm going to be the face of the franchise when we're up, I'm going to be the face of the franchise when we're rebuilding, and that the Mavs were able to luck into or facilitate a trade for Luca and be here for Luca's first 2 years was really big for Dirk. Overall, I feel like Dirk left a lot of money on the table to try to field competing teams, and I felt like that good faith wasn't rewarded by Mark Cuban to the front office. I really don't. I really don't think that they put their best foot forward to try to field competitive teams around Dirk. I remember one particular offseason, they traded their pick away to save cash instead of picking a young Giannis Antetokounmpo. I mean, nobody knew what he could have been for Dallas. Had Dallas drafted him and developed him, we all see what he's doing up in Milwaukee. But I mean, he could have been the heir apparent to Dirk, after the fact. So there's just a lot of missteps that have happened, and I feel like I feel like Dirk was content with this championship. I know Cuban was definitely content with this championship, but I want to pose a question before we move on to the Luca deal. And obviously, Dirk had a really really nice retirement, even though he didn't officially announce his retirement until the day that they did the last home game that they had for the Mavericks is when he announced his retirement. Then before he went to that San Antonio game. But the question that I wanted to pose is, obviously he has one ring. Had Dirk gotten that second ring in 2006, where would you guys see Dirk Nowitzki right now in the pantheon of the greats? Obviously, I feel like he could have gotten the third ring. He could have gotten his first ring back in 2003, 2004. But, but because of injury, obviously injury limits anybody and everybody. But I will say, just for posterity's sakes, just these two, where would you see Dirk if he had gotten those two rings, the one in 2006 and one in 2011, Malika?
If he would have got another ring, I think he would be ranked higher because how people look at rings, they forget about, or if they're not watching you in the playoffs, sometimes, unless you're like a Charles Barkley or somebody like that, they think that they don't bestow the respect on your name that they should. I feel like if Dirk would have won another ring or another MVP, that could have put him on another level. But I have him ranked pretty decent. He's in my, like I gotta look at my list again, but I didn't have him too low. But I think that some people put him lower than he should, because quote unquote he got lucky with that one ring. I don't think it was luck. Mavericks clearly won that series. That wasn't luck. The better team won that year, but I think he will be respected more than he is. I think he is considered, when they talk about Dirk, he's one of the greatest. He's one of the best international players of all. But he's not just one of the best international players. To me, he's one of the best players of all time. When you look at his impact on the league, what he brought. You look at the league now. Like, yes, there were other international players before Dirk, but there's a before Dirk, there's an after Dirk, and I feel like he, kind of helped change the trajectory. And when you mentioned Giannis, we have to note just how raw. And I did a special. I'm gonna redo them because that book on Giannis really revealed that movie on Giannis. Yeah, don't that was some bull. The book on Giannis really really goes into just how poor and his family was in Greece, and then how the struggle they went through. It was tough, and just when he got in the league, like he really didn't have the greatest training before he got in the league, and just got his passport not too far before the NBA draft. Jason Kidd and his staff developed the hell out of Giannis. Like, when he got there, that's when his development really began. And Giannis at first was like, "Who is that?" He didn't even know who Jason Kidd really was until he looked him up, and he was like, "Oh, I better pay attention." Like, so in terms of him, I think him going to Milwaukee was a destined thing. I don't think he's ever leaving there. Um, like he got that one ring, and he sounded content at first, but I think that Giannis belonged, and I just wanted to say I think he should have. He ended up where he belonged because he technically should have been in Atlanta, but Atlanta didn't. They did all the work. They did so much work, and then just didn't want to move up. They want to pay to move up, but that's a whole nother room. I spent too much time talking about one of my favorite subjects of today's league. But when you look at like of course Dirk got the great send off, him and D Wade. But I just think that with Dirk, I will always look at and respect Dirk for the great player that he was, and he belongs on all the lists, and he deserves all the accolades. Anything else you want to say about Dirk before we move on to Luca as we close out? I mean, I'm gonna make Luca would be your final comments, but let's go around for your final comments on between you and Micah. Your final comments on Sean's here. We gotta let Sean get in his comments on 2011. If you want to come up, Sean, because he wanted to say something about he wanted to get in on 2011. Let's let him get in his words. Bringing him up, Sean with a W. Um, Hey, Sean.
Hey,
We just finished 2011. The funny thing is, you came in at the right time. Going in detail with Rolo and some of the Mavs fans. They thought I was ending, which is why some of them left.
oh,
But anything you want to say about 2000? What do you want to get in about 2011? I think the Mavericks. It was their series. I think they were the better team.
hmm
I don't think the Heat figured themselves out yet. Exactly per
agreed.
what Dirk said in the jumbotron. Like he thinks they were lucky to get him in their first year. Um, but what did you want to say about the 2011 series?
So, little known fact, Dirk was my favorite basketball player in the league until he retired. And it started in '07, no, '07, '06, when Dallas beat San Antonio in San Antonio in game 7. The 3-point play he scored when Manu, I don't know why Manu fouled him to this day. And I was just like, wait a minute. This dude just went into San Antonio, won in game 7. Like nobody goes in San Antonio wins game 7. I rocked with this. I'm with this guy. And that's actually why I initially. He's also initially why I wasn't a big fan of Dwayne Wade, because I will, to my dying day, I would believe that for some reason David Stern woke up and said, you know what? Dwayne Wade's a superstar. He can get all the calls he wants. So he can just run into the lane and throw the ball over his head backwards. And, it's 2 shots. And I'm like, what? All right. So fast forward so get to 2011. And I'm pretty sure y'all mentioned all this, but a lot of people don't remember that. A lot of people picked them to lose in the first round to Portland, because '07 was the We Believe year, and then I'm pretty sure in 2010 they were the 2 seed. They lost to San Antonio the first round. So a lot of people picked them to lose to one knee Brandon Roy and Portland, and they beat Portland. And then, so the funny thing is, once they beat Portland, and I was like, I wanted to pick them to beat the Lakers, but I just didn't have the balls to do it.
Yeah, they swept them.
Yeah, but I didn't have the balls to do it, because I was like, yo, the Lakers, and listen, Mike is here, Rolo's here, like all the Mavs fans know the Lakers. Kobe gave the Mavs fits. Like Kobe had a game where he scored 56 and 3/4, and the Mavs had
61.
61
It
and
was
3/4, and
61.
the Mavs had 60. Like, um, no, something like that. He outscored the Mavs in a game. So I didn't pick them but once they won the first 2 in LA, I said they're winning. I said they're winning the championship, and I have the email. I told my friends they're winning the title, and like, what are you talking about? I was like, no. If they swept these dudes, they're winning the title. That's it, because these are the guys they could never get past. So they swept them. So they swept the Lakers. They beat OKC in 5, and they came back from like 20 down in game 4 and game 5, and then they get to the finals, and I'm like, yo, so I literally was like, yo, they're winning the championship, because at that time I was like, with the Heatles, I was like, you need 8 guys to win a championship, and they don't got 8 guys. Like, they got a good 3, but they're depending on Eddie House and Mike Bibby and Joel Anthony. I'm like, you need 8 guys. So I'll wrap up here. Game 2, I'm watching in a bar in New York, me and my friends. And when Wade hits that 3 to put them up 15 with 8 minutes left in the fourth, he keeps his hand up, and I'm like, and everyone's like, this game is over. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This ain't over. They've been coming back from 20 down all playoffs. This is nothing. They got it. And every time they would score, I'd be walking up and down the bar, clap my hands like, this ain't over. 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 And they just chipped away, and they won. And obviously they won in 6. And the funny thing is that game 6 was the epitome of why you need a team, because Dirk was awfuling for most of game 6. But Deshaun Stevenson picked them up, Sean Marion picked them up, Jason Kidd picked them up, like everybody picked them up for like 3 quarters. And then I remember in the 4th quarter, he kind of woke up a little bit. So that's all I had to say. Like, Dirk is one of my favorite players of all time. I have his jersey.
Yep.
He's like, of non-Knicks jerseys I have, it's like, there was a Kobe one I had.
That says a lot from a Knicks fan,
I have
people.
his jersey.
That says a lot.
Got his jersey. I call him Me and my friends call him Disco Dirk. Like, Disco Dirk could do no wrong. I think he's the greatest. I think he is the best European player in NBA history. I think he's better than Kevin Garnett. Argue with your goldfish. Because Dirk was 50 wins, no matter who was on his team for like years. So that's all I want to say. I want to give Dirk his flowers. While, because that dude is cold. That dude is I think he's kind of like underrated a little bit, because people don't really realize how much of a dog he was. But because everyone remembers We Believe and all that stuff. But Dirk was a dog.
Yeah,
Man, I
that
really
season, the We Believe Warriors, they won 67 games, and the We Believe knocked them out in the first round. That did some damage. So that's why I love that to his like image or legacy, like his, how we do when somebody loses, and like after winning in the regular season, you go out in the first round like that. It's like a scandal to fans, and it's like, yo, he's not who we thought he was. But he proved, to me, like, yeah, Dirk is one of the greats, and I love that he got his ring and he got it versus LeBron. You can't say he got that ring against a team that didn't belong in the finals. You can't say he played against an injured Warriors team as an example, or he played against a team that was definitely going to be like a coast. He earned that ring, and I just love that for him. I just wish he would have won the ring versus the Heat, also the other one, but he evened it out with the Heat and with D Wade. Like, he evened
True
it out.
story.
Yeah, so I love Dirk, which is why I wanted to have this space to show him some love. One of the greats, like one of the greats, and I'm looking at. I haven't got to watch one game tonight, so guys. You guys say your final comments on Dirk, and then I'm gonna let you guys close out on how you feel about how Mark is building around Luca or not building around Luca, and whether you guys, because of how Mark is, uh, his, how he's acting as an owner with Luca, and do you think that his next contract he's going to stay? Okay, go. We'll start with Micah, and then we'll go to Rolo.
Hey, real quick, the funniest thing about winning that finals, and as great as it was, they shut down that whole not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6. That shit was over. But anyways, um, but just closing thought, just everything the Rose's been saying, for the way that he had to battle, like, I'm talking, he went against they swept the Lakers team that was coming off of 2 of 3. Like they had been to 3 finals in a row and they swept them. Like I don't think that gets brought up enough. And I'm not gonna lie, as a LeBron fan, I do like LeBron. I don't think he's a GOAT, but I still love his game. But I don't think it's fair that people try to use that against his legacy in a way like like people like Skip do, acting like he just got beat by a bunch of bums. Like I don't think that's fair, and I think that shows lack of appreciation for how great Dirk was, in my opinion, and several other players on that team as well. Like I feel like at the end of the day, I feel like that's part of the reason that they are underrated because it seems in a lot of discord, people will want to tear somebody down to build somebody else up. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's my final comment. Yeah, we can. I'm ready to get into Luca team building discussion whenever y'all are ready.
Rolo, do you want to? Did you say your final words on Luca? Did you want to? I mean, on Dirk, or do you want to? Do you want to say anything else on Dirk and Sean?
Yeah. Just real quick, a couple of points. After the championship, whenever they had the parade, Deshaun Stevenson had one of the greatest T-shirts ever created. He had "How does my Dirk taste?" So that's one thing. I also wanted to mention I appreciate like I said, I appreciate you, Malika, Sean, man. I appreciate you and the love you showed Dirk, man. I appreciate anybody and everybody that gives Dirk his flowers because I feel like what you said is so true. I think that up until this point, I think that even in some cases, Dirk has been even underappreciated or not really reviewed as one of the um, revered as one of the top players of all time, and he definitely deserves his flowers there. Again, I'd mention he had taken multiple discounts to try to field competitive teams. I think that's a direct correlation as to what the lack of foresight on the front office, and particularly Mark Cuban as an owner. Um, but we'll get into that in the Luca discussion. But the last thing, Dirk's retirement, it really hit me kind of hard because, like I said, Dirk and I are the same age. I'm a few years older, but I really looked up to him as a model athlete. He does a lot of stuff for charity that a lot of people don't even know that he doesn't want accolades for because he's just trying to do things, just in the cover of night, just to do them because that's his heart. That's why, for me personally, this is how I feel. I feel that, like he said in his retirement, he came to Texas, however 20 something years before as a German kid, but he really feels like he's a Texan now, and I really feel like he is the epitome of Dallas sports. Dallas. I mean, I know, like I said, I said it earlier. Football is king in Texas. We all know that. But for me, Dallas basketball is forever going to be associated with the name Dirk Nowitzki. And the only reason why I say that is because we don't know what's going to happen with Luka. I'd love to say that Luka is going to be here for the long haul, but that really is going to be predicated on what the front office decides to do if they ever decide to pull their head out of their ass and actually try to field a somewhat competitive team for Luka or help him bring in players to help accentuate him. But yeah, I mean, Dirk's retirement was wonderful. He had Larry Legend, he had Sean Kemp, he had Detlef Schrempf, he had Scottie Pippen, show up for him and sing praise to Charles Barkley. I sing praises of his, of him and his retirement. So I mean, that's whenever you're, previous superstars and even current people start giving you accolades. You had during that retirement season, you had Doc Rivers stop a game even though the Clippers were winning, in easy fashion, and he wanted to give Dirk his flowers, letting the people in L.A. cheer for him. I mean, and we didn't even know that he was retiring yet at that time. I mean, everybody had speculated, but nobody had truly known. And for people to do that just genuinely out of organically, just because they felt like doing it, that felt something really, really special. That's probably the last time I sports cried. Hey, I'm a guy. I cry. I'm gonna admit it. But yeah, I mean, we can go ahead and get into the Luka and the front office discussion. But I really appreciate you guys giving Dirk his due.
Sean, any last words you want to say on Dirk before we move on to final comments on Luca and the front office?
I mean, basically everything. Like Dirk doesn't. I think Dirk definitely got his flowers at the end. The All Star game, the special All Star game appearance from Adam Silver. I like the fact that him and Wade, are cool. Because after y'all remember the fake coughing thing during the finals. That was really nice, whatever. But listen, man, like I said, Dirk is a legend. He's the greatest European player of all time. He is one of the best power forwards I've ever seen. His influence on the NBA, like anytime you see anyone take a freaking
Yep.
one-legged fadeaway, that's
Yep.
him. That is him. That is nobody else. Anytime, like when I see Victor Wembanyama taking one-legged
Mm-hmm.
threes, that's Dirk.
Yep. And he'll be here next year. And I just wanted to note before we move to Luca that my dumbass did not switch out my fantasy quarterbacks. I forgot that Seattle was playing damn San Francisco, and I'm going to lose this week because I didn't switch him out for Jared. And I just wanted to express that I know I'm losing this week because of that. I am disgusted. I just looked at fantasy and almost fell out. But Micah, y'all can laugh at me. It's okay. I'm an idiot. I should have did it earlier. I forgot.
We all been
Micah,
there before.
uh, so stupid. And I've got to keep Dak now. I really got to keep Dak, and because I'm in the 2 quarterback league. I have to keep Dak now. Go ahead, Micah. But this is your
Yeah,
final comments right here. This is the final comment, so I can watch a game
yeah,
because I don't do
right.
well.
So, final comments. The great thing about in Dirk's last year, there was like so many different teams that like stopped games or at the end of the games just wanted to give them their flowers. So like Popovich, the way he embraced them and had their ceremony in San Antonio was great. And Doc Rivers stopping the game, just a class act, a sign of greatness.
In Chris's words, he's a great coach. LOL. But anything you want to say about Luca in the front office as you close out, because the way it's looking, I mean, if he don't start making better decisions and building around Luca, like he's an international player. It's a feeling sometimes that cornerstone international players don't leave their franchises. Like they establish a home, they tend to stay. But who knows, right? Do y'all think what would take to keep? What do you guys think about Luca and how they're building around him?
Go
And
ahead,
these
Mike.
are our final comments.
Go ahead,
Um,
Rolo. Oh, go ahead. I'm just go ahead. Either one of y'all. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Micah.
so the way they're doing now, I feel like whenever, like just one bad move completely messes with your timeline. Like just one bad decision, one person, like, I mean, Malika, how
Jalen
much better would
Brunson.
y'all? Yeah, Jalen Brunson. How much better would y'all be with Jared Allen right now? So
Oh God,
and
don't like yeah, not yeah. Let's move on. Let's keep going. Jesus,
no, but it's like
the position
it's
we
just
need. He's the position we goddamn need, like right now. But go ahead.
Oh, and y'all have Brooke Lopez. Ooh, finger. But anyways, that's besides the point. But like, so those one bad moves, bad decisions. Every time you make one, it's like you're pretty much messing off 2 to 3 years of your timeline. Like, so the first two things, like everything that we're going through now, can really be traced back to the mistakes of 2019. Um, and like the different things that we did. Like, first of all, we gave up draft capital to move up to get Luca when we didn't actually even have to. Like, there's actually a deal on the table to where if we would have just taken on Kim Bazemore's money, we wouldn't have had to give up the pick. So, and that's another problem with the way our front office and staff has operated a while, is not taking the draft seriously, because you can't get other players until you either develop somebody that you can trade for a bigger piece. And like, if you don't have those guys to trade, if you don't have the draft capital, and um, we were making a bunch of panic moves for a long time, giving up a bunch of firsts when we didn't have to. So now we're in this situation, and partially, and another thing of, yeah, we brought up Brunson, right? And it's just this is one of the frustrating things with Cuban is, to me, he acts childish sometimes, like, to where you're like, you just want to scream at him, like, dude, just grow the hell up. Like, you knew Brunson was leaving. Like, honestly, how many players are there that would really are on the Knicks that could be decent role players for this team right now? Like, there's several, and hell, we're trying to actually get some of them that they
Y'all like
dumped to
former Knicks.
Detroit.
Y'all like former Knicks down there. Like,
Yeah, we
that's
do.
where the Knicks
We are
go.
the Mavericks. We are the Dallas Knicks, that's for sure.
The Dallas Knicks. Yep, the Dallas Knicks.
So, I mean, I don't know. It's just it. We don't. I know we're in a window, but like a lot of people pointed out
One more minute,
that Luka
Micah. One
did.
more minute.
Yeah, one more minute. So one thing, this was something that didn't look great, and showed frustration towards the ownership whenever they were trying to point out that Luka didn't dap a pal at the end of the play, but in the process of that, he was given like pretty much a death stare to Mark Cuban. So I think that's something to where he's pretty much saying, like, I don't see him staying if they don't do something. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not a big proponent of pushing any Luca leaving agendas, but I'm pragmatic as well, and I like to think that the Western Conference Finals run that the Mavs had last season was both a blessing and a curse. I don't like to look back. Last season was last season, but apparently the Mavs and the front office and everybody didn't learn from the mistakes of Atlanta in their Eastern Conference Finals run, and decided they wanted to go ahead and extend Maxi Kleber and just run it back with some of the same players. Oh, and sign JaVale McGee. Oh, and having Tim Hardaway Jr. come back is like having a free agent. And so, I mean, it's just many, many blunders that's a space unto itself with the Mavericks. They could have,
Oh, it
um,
is. It is.
yeah,
That's why I said closing
yeah,
comments. And
yeah.
but
So
to put it out there, this is not a start of a new space.
yeah, yeah, no,
This
no, 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 no. Just really quickly though. I don't think that Luca's going to display the same loyalty that Dirk did. I don't think that because Luca, if you guys remember, Dirk essentially grew up with Mark Cuban as the owner. Mark Cuban wasn't the owner originally when Dirk um, got drafted and traded to the Dallas Mavericks. He bought the team like a year or two later, and so they grew up together and fought all these battles and everything. But now Mark Cuban is looking at it in terms of a business. and he's wanting to make a profit and he's not trying to invest too much money into it or pay into the luxury tax, you're not going to be able to win anything if you're not going to pay into the luxury tax or have a plan or people around to push that plan in place. So we're gonna see. But I mean, right now Luka's under contract for the next however many years since he signed that extension. We'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, I'm fascinated as a Mavericks fan to see what's going to happen. And yeah, I mean that's my final thoughts on Luka, and I hope that he sticks around for the long haul. I hope that Mark Cuban and the front office gets it together. I hope they don't think that just that Luka will be happy with one Western Conference final run, but we'll see what happens. But no, I appreciate you, Malika, Sean, everybody that showed up in this space to give Dirk his due. I really do appreciate you guys.
Thank you. And my next room will be on the Larry Bird era of the Boston Celtics that was voted for by Boston fans. I get it. I wanted more Bill Russell votes, but that might be too far back for people, which means when I do that room, it'll be two people here. But I will still do Bill Russell some justice, even if it's just one person, or I may do it as a podcast. So my next room would be I need to go. I'm going to do East, West, go back and forth. So my next room is on the Boston Celtics. And then I'll probably do the Clippers and then come back to the Knicks for them to pick their era that they want to review, which may be the 90s. But I'm curious of what they're going to say.
I know what era. I think I know your next Nick space for the rewind because this
Yeah.
actually ties into my closing comment. It should be the events of January 31st, 2019, because that was the day that we traded Kristaps to Dallas. And that day was a fork in the road for both franchises. I argue with I got into a big argument with Chris on a Who Space episode one day about the Porzingis trade, if the Mavs won or lost it. And I'm like, well, clearly they lost the trade because they decided on this guy 2 years later. But that's neither here nor there. What I will say is that, like, I understand what he was trying to do. Like, if I can get the second star now at this age, you can lock it in. But literally, like Micah said, like, one decision, like that decision has had a ripple effect on the entire franchise for ever since. Because they had this slot of $30 million being taken up by a guy who could not stay in the court and did not get work well with Luka. And now, granted, you've took that salary slot, you broke up into two different pieces with Bertans and Dinwiddie, but obviously that's not really getting it done. So
that actually is the next New York Knicks room. That's a perfect topic.
And we could do it. We could do it on the anniversary.
We can do it. Yep. I'll message you separately. That is the perfect room. So Rolo, you're welcome to come back and
yeah. I'll definitely be there. I'll definitely be there.
It's a fork in the road moment for both franchises. And listen, as much as I think Steve Mills is a war criminal, who's our president of basketball operation for Leon Rose, at least he had the foresight to realize this dude ain't it, and we need to get off of him. But we can get into that another day. But that's the last thing I want to say. They better figure something out because you do not want to lose Luka.
Thank you. When is the anniversary?
It's January 31st.
Okay, that timing actually works. Thank you everybody for coming through. I really appreciate it. Our tribute to Dirk went off with flying colors. My next room will be on the Boston Celtic, the Larry Bird era. So we'll talk about that. And then after that, we'll probably go to the Clippers. And then we'll come back. My next throwback room will be after that, with Sean on the Kristaps Porzingis trade and the impact that had on both franchises. That is an amazingly great topic, actually. I'm going to do a tribute space to Dr. J, probably before then, and I'm going to do another tribute space to one of my favorite European players of all time, Drazen Petrovic, who unfortunately left us too soon. So those are a few spaces I have coming up, and I need to fit in the Mahmoud Abdul Rauf autobiography discussion and the Charles Barkley biography discussion. I have not read either book yet. So with the holiday break coming, my job is shutting down for 2 weeks. To give us 2 weeks off, I will finally read it. So, Micah, you want to go ahead before we say goodnight?
Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna ask you. Did you say something about doing a Bill Russell space anytime?
I'm
Or
going
have
to
you
do a
already
Bill
done one?
Russell tribute space. No, I have done one before. These were recorded with Dime. I'm gonna go back further with some of these rooms, even though there may be one or two people in it, or I may do it as a podcast because I want to pay respect to some of the originators or some of the early people in the game. I may do it as a podcast or I'll do it live with Dime because yeah, he goes deep with that kind of stuff, and I'll keep you abreast. But I do want to do a
Right.
special Bill Russell space because and also Dr. J is coming next month. I don't care if it's only a few people. Dr. J deserves love. I'm doing, and
Absolutely.
I want to do some ABA spaces because I was reached out to by the ABA. Some people doing ABA documentary, so that's coming. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll keep you abreast. So thank you guys. Have a good night, and let me see what Memphis did to Milwaukee because apparently I missed something good. Have a good night.